Better questions, fam. I'm not supposed to pick favorites. If I had to, it'd be tough not to pick this guy. Jack DuBois, finally got him on the podcast. I think he's an incredible human. I'm proud to call him one of my best friends. And I hope you enjoy the conversation, talking all things God. All right. Jackie boy, my favorite human. Yeah, dude, love you. Thanks for coming. Really quick, because you're going to, as long as you're willing, you're going to be a regularly scheduled guest on this show, because I freaking love you. But tell me your story. Take me from birth to today. Kid's about to get married. Walk me through your life. Give me your elevator story.
Oh man! All right, a little bit of everything. Or are we on the spiritual topic today?
I would say tell your history with a bias towards your faith, but give me your whole life story. Okay. We want to know you.
Okay. Yeah. I'm from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Grew up here in the north. Kind of in the family business. So our family owns a whole food supplement company, and so grew up around the business and stuff like that. Going to Catholic school, and really diving into my faith. Really as a kid, and really deeply in high school as well. When I got out of high school, I went to business school, and growing up in the family business, I kind of always felt bad for being the so-called silver spoon, right? So I think there's some pressure, throughout college, on me for that, and really my whole life. And so when I went to college, I really want to be an entrepreneur. And so actually back in high school, I started a firewood and tree service business, and just kind of always try to earn my own path. Right. And, kind of ran that throughout college, had a couple other startups. And then when I got out of college, I had always wanted to be in the family business. I heard some great stories. I'd had some great experiences of my own with our products. But I actually started working out of high school too at the farm, which is attached to our business. So we have a 900-acre certified organic farm, and I started working out there during the summers throughout my college years. So I worked out there about 5 to 6 years. But when I went to graduate, I really wanted to get more into the sales side of the business. And my old man really wanted me, I think, to stick it out on the farm and take over the farm. But I also, I was kind of getting mentored at the time, to go elsewhere too, and try to get some outside experiences, right? And I kind of felt that, coming out of college, it was my probably only opportunity. If I started working in the family business right away, I'd kind of get sucked in and not be able to go elsewhere. But I ended up, going and working for the family business right away. My dad really wanted me to work there full time. And so I started, kind of a rotation after college, working in various parts of the business. So I worked very heavily on the commercial side of the business. So I spent, some time in marketing, education, customer care, inside sales, out in the field a little bit. We sell mainly through healthcare practitioners. So, meeting with chiropractors and naturopaths, some medical doctors, things like that. So really enjoyed this time in my life. And then I'm getting ready to get married to my high school sweetheart, and move to Austin, Texas, and take over a sales territory down in Austin. So in a nutshell, that I guess would be Jack DuBois.
Sweet, dude. Thank you. So one day we're going to dig into, I really want to dig into all things SP. I'm a huge fan of SP. Simone, Charlie, I'm hoping one day you guys sponsor this podcast. So there you have it. But I'm just a huge believer in the product. But for today, we're just going to park it. Our first 90, we'll go with faith. So walk me through faith journey of Jack. You're the son of parents are divorced. They were divorced when how quick after you were born? And then you've got 3 sisters, right?
Yep. I've got 3 older sisters. I think they got divorced around 12, when I was 12 years old, something like that. Separated a little while before then. 3
older sisters. 1 is active in the business. 2 are kind of doing their own thing.
Yep.
And so faith for you, because I know, and I don't think you said it. So you grew up kind of going to Catholic Matt,
Yeah.
you were like a good Catholic boy, right?
Yeah, man. When I was in grade school, I was going to Catholic school, or I was going to church like 3 times a week. I would serve church on Mondays before school, and then Wednesday we had like an all school mass, and then we'd go on the weekends too. So I was serving mass a lot and going to church a lot, and that really gave me a great faith foundation. As a kid, I think I was always taught those stories, right? And taught to be faithful. And I had, my mother, my grandmothers, other people in my life, kind of lead me spiritually. And I saw their faith and I wanted that too, right? And so I think I had the opportunity, to kind of sit with myself a little bit and find the faith on my own. I think I was, even when I was a little kid, very, very prayerful. And I think it was because, I've kind of started to realize this as I explore my faith a little bit more. I think it was really because of the self-reflection that I had, right? Sitting by myself quietly, prayer before night, before I go to bed. But I think, it wasn't maybe necessarily the Catholic Church that made me find my faith. But it was really sitting with myself and reflecting at really a very young age, and feeling into my faith, right? Getting out of just the head and the intellectual understanding of what God and Jesus and all of these things are, right? And actually feeling into it. And I think I had, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity at a young age to really connect with the Creator from a prayerful level.
I want to make sure for those, I want to be, we're going to talk to two people. One, I call him like the triple R, like the religious, righteous, rigid thinker, right? We're going to talk to those people that like know Jesus, what I would call like, so we're just the triple R. It's not insulting. It's just, I don't know what the traditionalists, whatever. And then we're also talking to people that are like, I think this is our real audience, is the people that like look at the church and are like, no thanks, good on that, right? And so you and I have been, so we got to like, we can't take our last 4 years of conversating and like just pretend that everybody's up to speed. So I want to walk the dog on that, and I'd like to do it through your journey. So we're going, so you're you're going to a Catholic school, is that right? You grew up in a Catholic, so you're 3 times a week in the Catholic faith, very connected to Jesus in the traditional Catholic means and methods. And then most of us go through high school, and was high school Catholic still?
Yeah, I went to an all boys Jesuit high school as well.
Dude, the best part of this, just so you know, is like without a fail, all of the people that I brought on here are my friends, and I realize I know less about them than I didn't know that. Like I didn't know that you went to all boys high school. Okay, and so was Isabel at an all girls?
Yeah, she was at the like sister school kind of. They're not really connected, but it's the all girls Catholic school in the area. So we did like joint dances and stuff like that, and a lot of mutual friends back and forth. So that's actually kind of how we met. Okay.
And then if you were to be, so let's stay in the traditional Christian, when you're going to high school, how many people are like following the rules? How many, and then how many people are actually like faithful Christians versus not even close, would you say? I have no idea for Catholic school.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know either because I didn't go to public school, right? Like, maybe there's a little bit more of a faith base there. Certainly we had opportunities to go to mass together too, and do some retreats that were very faith focused. And so I think we definitely had more opportunity. So there's always like those weird, it's interesting. Like when you find your faith, I feel like you're kind of put in this like weird bucket, right? Like the Bible beaters, right? And so like, sure, you have that group. But then like my group of friends was still out, like, drinking and partying and stuff like that too. So, and I actually like, and that doesn't exclude you from being like a faithful person, in my opinion. So I did get to meet, probably one of the most faithful guys that I know of my age, my buddy Tony, who's going into the SEAL training right now. He's a naval officer, but I met him, and he came from, and not that we didn't, mess around and have some fun and get in trouble and stuff too, but, you know, he came from a really, really Catholic family as well, and like even more like Catholic and faithful than my family. His parents are both, I think, like close to saint level, and so just a really rich family, bunch of brothers, one sister, and so we really hit it off, and we really throughout high school talked a lot about our faith, and I would say in high school I definitely found the deepest faith of my life. I don't know if that was like the Catholic going to church thing or if it was me exploring it on my own. I think I tend to believe at this point that it was more me, doing the exploration on my own. And I think my junior year of high school, I started praying the prayer of Saint Daniel like every single night, and it's just basically a prayer that you're just really asking for stronger faith, right? Saint Daniel, blessed me with the faith that you had, right, to stand in front of the lion, right, and so I prayed that every night, and it really changed my life. It brought me closer and closer to Christ, and so that was really one of the deepest points of faith for sure was throughout high school.
And so for those of us that didn't get to experience Catholic school, so I went to public school. I was not seeking faith. So I would have been, I think I would have been common folk, would have called myself a Christian and lived none of it, right, in high school. So we go Lutheran. I get confirmed Lutheran, still don't even know what that means. Went to Wednesday classes for X amount of time. It was very meaningless in my life. We partied hard. And so I think I'd say like we probably would fall into the standard deviation in high school. Like 30% of us would have called ourselves Christians, and we didn't go to church. We didn't live it. We didn't press into it. And then I think like you kind of talk about the Bible beaters. I don't know if that's 1%. It's no more than 10% in our school.
Yeah, it's low. It's low. Yeah.
Is that the same in Catholic? Is that about the same distribution, or
I'd say maybe 10%, like high side, I would say,
Okay, so it's similar. So you ran with the crowd. So I just want to be clear, because you ran with the crowd that was like, we're drinking, we're hooking up with girls, we're doing everything that normal people do. We're not following what the school says. But you had this what I'd call not awkward, but atypical relationship with Tony, where you guys are like, I actually believe in this stuff and this means something. And you're like pressing into your faith at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that like in a gist, that's it. I think a lot of other people had the faith too, though, but it just wasn't like something that we really talked about. You know what I mean? Like Tony and I had like cracked that egg and got in and started having those conversations. And I don't think that like the crew that I was rolling with, like, I think they were all believers, right? Like, I think, it's just, being in high school, right? Like that's not exactly what you're focused on. Right. And so I think they're all good people at the end of the day and really down to earth and probably, followers of Christ as well. And probably, like me finding that a little bit more in their adult life. But it just really wasn't a focus for them at the time. Right. So I don't know. It's like they weren't necessarily Bible beaters. Right. But I think they did, like if you had asked them about it, they would probably fall back on their faith.
Yeah. Well, we'll get it. I think if I'm reading the room, we're talking I think I think we're going to get into the dogma, the legalism, and all of that is probably filters into what you're saying. Okay, so anyway, so we're at a high, and you're praying the prayer of St. Daniel, junior year, go to college. We all kind of get lost in college. I take me as quick as you can, like just like wave top from the point of college to now. And you're what, 2 years out of college, 1 year out of college? You're 20. How old are you? How young are you?
2 years out of college. Yeah.
Are you 24?
Yeah.
Freaking young, man. It's nice. It's nice to know you. I'm getting gray hairs and a beer belly, and you're just getting started in your career. All right, cool. So we're junior year of high school, and then tell me. So we go through college, kind of falls off, I assume.
Yeah. So in college, so I'm with Isabel now. We started dating when we were sophomores. In college, I think, it was a really difficult, time in my life, right? Where you're immersed in sex culture, right? All your buddies are getting with girls, and I had a really, really special woman by my side, and I didn't want to let her go, and so I was just really wrestling with that, and but you're around everybody else that's doing something totally different, right? And so you start asking people, your mentors, your close, Catholic family members. And, most people, there's some people that are standing up at my wedding, right, that supported us, from the beginning, and you being one of them, Kev. But, there were some close people that really had advised me to like, go meet other girls, right? Or go meet other people. And,
oh my gosh,
if I didn't do it now, right, when would I do it? And that would be hanging over my head, the rest of my life, right? Like if I ended up marrying this girl. And I got to say, now that I'm out of college a couple of years, the more and more I hear from people that live that life in college, right? And everybody else is, now getting close to the marriage too, is, man, it's so cool what you guys have, right? Like, so awesome you guys stuck it through. And it's just it's interesting, right? Because we had to wrestle with that throughout college, and we made it, but there was definitely times of temptation and things like that. And now what we have is really unique, and so I'm just so glad that that's the choice that I made. And I knew I was deep down, I knew I was with the right woman the whole time, and that's the reason we stuck it out and we made it. So I would say, as far as that's kind of a cool story from college. But as far
I've got it marked down for our next episode: degradation of humans along with sex culture, because I think we could jam.
Yeah. That's an episode in and of itself for sure. But yeah, so as far as my faith went, I was working, was going to school. Traveling back and forth to Madison to see Isabel, which was about an hour away, and really into hunting and fishing, and a bunch of different hobbies on the side too. And so when I started school off, I think my faith was still there, but it was kind of underneath. Like I wasn't paying much attention to it either. And then I was out snowmobiling out west, and I met this really cool dude, Kevin Hohe. And that's what really sparked my faith, again. So a couple of years later, and I was probably still praying, but maybe not like every night. And I still had a pretty good connection. But I met you out west on a snowmobile trip, and we hit it off. We started talking business and entrepreneurship. And I think you really ended up being a good faith mentor, a mentor in a lot of different arenas, but definitely a faith mentor, right? And I saw you, and I think what was so refreshing about you is that you were so open-minded. And up until then, right, like even all the Catholics, we're just so rigid, right? People that I looked up to were telling me like, oh, if you don't believe in God, you're going to hell, right? And I'm just like, man, some good people out there that probably just haven't had the opportunity, to believe in God, right? I've had every opportunity. I've been taught it. But what about those kids that grew up going to public school and, their parents told them that believing in God was like believing in Santa Claus, right? That's a good friend of mine. That's what his dad told him. So you have a little bit of that going on. And so I just never really believed that. Now I know that's actually not the teaching of the Catholic Church, but just the way that a lot of Catholics interpret it. So you have that going on. And then, when I met you, you were just so open-minded, oh, well, what do you think about this? Well, what does the scripture say about it? And that's when, you start reading the Bible, and you start making your own conclusions, and you realize like really how open-minded Jesus Christ is, right? Whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Gentile, whether, he accepted people from all religions, all ways of life. And basically in my viewpoint of it, reading the scripture is, if you follow me, that's it, right? Like that's all you have to do is follow me, believe in God, and the rest will accomplish itself. And in the simplest sense, right? And so there isn't all of these all of these hoops you have to jump through, and there isn't the shame and guilt that's placed on you, right? And so, I just really, I guess, aligned with more of an open-minded philosophy, and that's, I guess, what we've been milling through and discussing and ruminating on for a couple of years now.
So it's interesting because the people I wanted to send this to are going to think that they're going to think that I corrupted you. Really quick before we get there, because I think what's been really interesting and refreshing, and it's funny you say that, I wouldn't have given myself as much credit as you give me for your faith, but it's like, I feel like we've been running such a similar race, like just in the paths kind of intertwined, but it's like we're ending up at the same point, which is, I don't know. That's what's been really refreshing. It's just funny. I have the same like silver spoon. I hate that, but it's part of my story anyway. But so I want to have you really quick, like, so you came from the traditionalist Catholic, and then you're seeing that there's a more expansive version, partly maybe by my doing, maybe I think a lot just like through your independent, like you've been doing all your own stuff too. Describe to somebody that's like, well, what do you believe then? Like, what is the essence of your faith? Like, like you hinted at it a little bit, but like, just like simply put, like, and I'm going to articulate the conventional, like the conventional as I interpret it, which I'm only just recently. So I want to make sure, like, the last 3 or 4 years of mentorship is only just recently am I breaking away from the traditionalist. But the traditionalist would say, hey, love God, love people. And if you don't believe in the resurrection or the death and resurrection, you're going to hell. Like, and there would be a competition for which of those two are more important. It's kind of like I believe the traditional, the church interpretation. 1, do you agree? And then 2, what is the essence of faith for you now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and I would say, like, I think you were the first one to get me to be open-minded, but I think most of my spiritual mentors now in my life are kind of maybe agnostic. Is that the right word, right? Like, they don't identify with any one religion. They're not necessarily Catholic. I have a couple people still in the Catholic faith that I very much look up to, and I'm really, I haven't totally left the church, right? I'm getting married in the Catholic Church, and I'm trying to dive into the catechism and figure out like what the real teaching is, right? And I'm really trying to study right now and find out where I align, right? My heart and the feeling of faith, right, is kind of like the Catholic Church is really rubbing me the wrong way, but I haven't totally turned my back on it. So, there's some really unique things about the Catholic Church, the Eucharist, things like that. And maybe I don't value and give that enough credit. Right. And so I'm at this point right now where I'm just really reading, studying, reflecting, and praying and trying to find my way. But I'm open-minded enough to like be going to some non-denominational churches and be open to hearing faith leaders from both sides of the coin, right? Listening to Catholic priests, but also listening to preachers out there. And what I would say on that subject before we really dive into your next question, but what I would say is I think what really is frustrating to me is that I don't think the Catholic Church is being successful. And that's really my biggest issue with the Catholic Church. It's like, okay, when you break down and you start looking at some of what's written in the catechism, it's like, it's not that I disagree with any of the foundational teachings, but I really disagree with the leadership, right? And if you've seen, some of the molestation, right, and the pedophilia that has gone on and been, covered up by the church, I think that's really a hard thing for me to wrestle with. And I get it. There's going to be bad people in any religion, but the fact that was covered up, right, and the fact, prolonged and proliferated, I have a serious issue with that. And then the other issue that I have, with the Catholic faith, and I'm really not trying to bash it because I'm really trying to find my way, whether I want to be a Catholic or not, but is I just don't think they're going out and evangelizing, right? And maybe that's short-sighted. Maybe that's an ignorant statement. I'm sure they are in many parts of the world, right? But in my community, they aren't, right? You go to the non-denominational church down the street and the parking lot's packed, the pews are packed. You go to Catholic church and there's 20 people there, right? And and the energy is just not there, and the feeling is just not there. And you've got a bunch of people, most of the time that aren't listening to the homily, right? And that, might believe that if they don't go to church every week, they're going to go to hell, but then they don't live the faith the rest of the week, right? And so those are some of the issues that I have. And I think, the Catholic Church, like, we need to be salespeople for God, right? Like, we need to be out there evangelizing. And I think the structure in which the way they do it, right, and the way that they carry out the faith is just really unsuccessful in this day and age. And when I look at my generation, right, I really think we're on the edge of a revival, man. I think there's more and more people my age that are, starting their own Bible studies and diving into the faith and sharing faith-based, social media posts, right? And it's really just, it's great. It's great to see. And most of them are, the Catholic Church is not doing that, right? It's the Bible. It's other people that are inspiring them, right? It's these non-denominational churches. And so I see a revival coming, and I'm just not sure how the Catholic faith, unless they really evolve, are going to relate to my generation. And I think the fact of the matter is, like, I don't think you need to do all these little things to get to heaven. But I think you need to find Christ on your own, right? And what I was never encouraged to do, I just kind of happened to do it, is what do I think about God, right? It was always, well, what does the priest say? What does my mom say? What does my grandmother say, right? What do these people say about the faith? I need to believe them. But nobody once said to me as a kid, right? Like, well, what do you think, right? Who is Jesus to you? Who is God to you? What does it feel like, right, when you're sitting there in the presence of God? And luckily, I found that just in the nature of the experience. But I think that's really what we're missing in today's day and age, is no one's looking within. And I think much of what I gleaned from the Catholic faith, right, heaven's a big way of, I think, describing it, is like, oh, well, when you die, you're going to get punished for all these things that you are doing here on earth. Well, as a kid, like, that's not enough, right? Like, death is a far way away, right? And I struggle with some sins and some vices for a long, obviously I still do, but some serious ones in my life. When I realized that, there might be a heaven on earth too, right? And a hell on earth. And most people are in hell on earth. And when I realized that these sins were directly influencing my ability to get to heaven on earth, is really when I was able to conquer a lot of things that were holding me back and that were considered sins, right? That I had gone to church for over a decade, right? And confessed these things to the preacher, the same sins. And I kept doing them, right? And so the confession in the conventional Catholic Church, for me, it didn't work, right? And whether, God forgave me or not, I think you can confess your sins directly to God. I don't think that you need a priest there. And I've actually, confessed these sins to other people in my life, right? Other mentors and groups of individuals that I'm finding leadership with, and confessing that openly to them is the modern day confession, right? And that's something, Kevin, you and I had talked about on the phone, and you had actually emphasized this. I think you were the first one to bring up the heaven on earth too for me. So both of those things were huge unlocks for me. And that's really, I guess your question was, I kind of went on a rant there, but like your question really around, like, what's the essence of your faith, man? I think it's all within, right? Like we are all made in God's image, but there's also a little piece of God in every single one of us, right? And when you see everybody on the street as a piece of that, like, they are also part of God, and the way that you treat them is the way that you treat yourself, and it's the way that you treat God, right? And I think there's a quote in the Bible, right, that the way you treat the least of my people is the way that you treat me, right? And so that's one of the things that I really believe, and we don't think that way enough, right? We think, oh, God is sitting up there. At least for me, this is my faith journey, right? We think, oh, God is sitting up there on some throne judging us. Oh man, it's not that way at all. It's not that way at all. And so, and I think that's kind of, and maybe not what the church's teachings are when you break it down in a catechism, but it is what is being taught out there, and so we need to be clear about this as Catholics in the Catholic Church, if that's what we believe. And we need to not let people think that God is just some way out there thing that you have to believe in, man. He's inside you, right? He's, the kingdom of heaven is within, God is within, like you have to look within to find him. And I don't know, like there's nothing that's like really black and white, like you have to do this, right? And even the belief, and like this is maybe a little out there. I mentioned this on the Bible study, I think, last week, and this is maybe a little out there and offensive, right? To maybe to Christians in general, but like even everything in the Bible, right? And I don't know what this makes me like.
No, I know right where you're going, and I just want everybody to know. I'm looking at Eric and Doug. I didn't tell him this, but I know exactly what you're going to say. This
actually really isn't from you. This is really from me in my own meditation and some practices really around the energy work and really looking within and trying to find God, right? And it has nothing to do with like you're more of the scriptural guy, right, Kevin? And so like it really has nothing to do with the scripture, but I think I found God on a much deeper level too throughout prayer and meditation. And my idea and understanding of a little bit of the quantum physics idea, right? Everything is energy, and really believing that God is at the heart of that, right? God is the life energy, and so. Like even you had asked a question last week, and I think I might have been one of the only ones that had taken it this way. But you asked like, well, so what if they prove that Jesus like didn't walk the earth, right? That he was, the Bible's all just is not real. And I was like, listen, that's not going to shake my faith in God at all, right? Because I found him outside the scripture, and I know where he's at, and I can tap into that, and I would still believe.
He said it. He actually did it. It's like, dude, that shouldn't be that way. But that's what it's like. What did you? You're a blasphemy. Like, and I'm sorry. Like, my producer told me I got to stop yelling in the mic because my voice is too loud. But I get excited. Like, it's what's cool, man, is because you found the same thing I found. And there's like, and like the thing that I think is uncool is like, we can talk about like 4D consciousness, and we can talk about all these other people that are on this spiritual journey. And you said the word energy, and I'm telling you, and this is what I want to make sure you know this. My church is your church. The non-denominational are going to kick you out just the same way the Catholics are. For you even saying, because I've sent it, because I'm in these groups, right? I'm leading these Bible studies, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you, is because like, dude, they're like, pray for Kevin, man. He's got demons inside of him. And I'm like, guys, no, I spent 13 years believing in the simple truth that you believe in. And if it's not true, then it's all bullshit, right? If Jesus didn't die and rise again, everything he said was a lie, which actually doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. What did he say that is a lie? None of it. And so it's what's interesting, and I don't want to go on my rant, but like maybe you can help me articulate a way, like the version that we exchange. So I think my encouragement to you would be explore the whole church being the Catholic Church. And I'm going to give you one example of that. Pope Francis said something super romantic and amazing, and it changed because I thought you guys were the worst of the worst, right? The most rigid, self-righteous, like screw everybody else. If you don't believe as I do, you're going to hell. Like go do your, rituals, blah, blah, blah. And Pope Francis said this beautiful thing that said, hey, I think all the religions are different languages to the same God. And I'm like, that's what I've been preaching. And I sent it to my non-denominational study. And I'm like, see guys, it's the same thing that stupid Indian contractor has been saying. Like, is it like, and I'm thinking ignorantly, Jack, I'm thinking they're going to be like, oh yeah, like maybe Kevin's on something. And dude, they're like, yeah, the Catholics are a bunch of fucking, like, they're like, they denounce the Catholics and the Pope instantly, dude. Like instantly. I'm like, wait a minute. I've been saying it for 6 months. You guys have denounced me as a false prophet. You're more or less, not totally. You're worried about me being a heretic. By the way, Jesus is the greatest heretic of all time. Like, study it. Self-righteous religious. That's the only people he came for them. But anyway, so like 6 months, you guys are like denying me. And it hurts me because I'm like, come on, guys. You guys, like, you got to come here with me. And they don't want to. And then the Pope says it, and I'm like, yeah, they're going to get it now. And dude, now the Pope's an idiot too. And I'm like, how have we got? And so I guess my question would be, assuming that people are going to listen to this and think that you're like high and to the right and you're subscribing to my theology and it's a dangerous theology and like we're false prophets and like if we go admit this into the world, right, we're bringing the church away from its foundation, which is you and I believe is an error, but we don't know. Maybe we are. We're fair with that being. But like, how would you explain to them the risk of their rigidity, or could you, or how would you speak to them in a way that's like there's an inherent danger and like bad, and it kind of goes into what you were saying. It's like the church isn't doing its job. Like, can you provide any color to that?
Yeah, I think thinking rigidly kills curiosity, right? And that I think is something that very much came from you, Kevin. When I met you, now I'm going to just touch on curiosity, which isn't what you asked, but
that's fine.
You were the most curious guy, and like I would bring my family around and you would just be drilling them like the whole time, just like no small talk, but you were just straight into the questions, right? Like deep stuff. And I was like, man, where are these questions coming from? Right. And I'm like, he's got some really great questions. And so like for a couple of years there, I was like trying to get curious. Right. But these questions were just not coming to me, and like I'd sit down with people and like, I'm like, man, I should be asking questions, but like, there's just nothing coming through, and eventually I got to the point where I was just, you get into something and you get interested but you have to come from this place of, I don't know much. Right. And that's where I'm at. And I mean, really everything that I've said and will say on this podcast, like it might be a little high and to the right. And I might come back a little bit. Like I'm a 24-year-old guy exploring his faith. Like, what do I know? Right. And certainly the Pope, who spent however many years exploring it, is probably a little ahead of my time. Right. So, but I'm going to believe what he says. And I think he's done a lot more amazing things in his life than I have. So, but I think I'm really just exploring it and getting curious and coming from a place of like, when I talk to my Catholic buddies, like I'm not going to war with them. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? Like I'm getting this feeling about the church, about these beliefs, and it's pulling me away. Like, how would you combat it? Right. I'm coming at a space of like, prove me wrong. Right. Because I want to be with the church. I really do. But then there's this other piece of me that's just like, just pulling me the other direction. And so I think you've got to be open and humble enough. And like, I guess it's probably really easy to listen to this podcast and say, oh, well, Kevin and Jack are the most arrogant, faith people. They think they've found something that like, and we're probably one of a million people that's gotten here. Right. Or more than that. Right. And so there's a lot of other people out there, I think, that believe similar to how we believe, but there's just no space for them, right? And they're off in these smaller communities. I know a handful of other people that think more like this and even more agnostic, right, than us. And I still believe like in the Jesus Christ, the more traditional God, the Bible, right? I think there's different ways you could prove the Bible is absolutely real, and like there's no disputing Jesus, right? And I 100% fully believe in that. But what I'm saying is really that's not the crux of my faith, right? God existed before Jesus, right? Maybe heaven didn't exist before Jesus, forgiveness of sins didn't exist before Jesus, arguably, but I mean, not arguably. That's kind of the truth, right? But God existed, right? And so, God is still out there either way. I think we're just very, very blessed people, to be able to read the scripture and glean from it what we need. And I think a lot of this comes from inner trust, right? If you love yourself and you trust yourself, you've got to find God on your own, right? And most people are like looking for it externally. They're looking for love externally. They're not loving themselves, right? So if this person doesn't love me, it's the end of the world, right? Constantly looking for, love from their parents, which, maybe they'll get one day, maybe they'll never get, right? And so we're constantly looking for this external love, and we're constantly looking for this external trust. And I'm guilty of this myself, right? I'm looking for someone to tell me I'm right all the time, right? Instead of just asking myself, asking God, right? God can speak to me too. Like, I don't have to go through a priest. God can speak to me too and tell me if I'm on the right track or not, right? And I've had some conversations with God, in which I believe that He has answered my prayers, right? And I think that most people just don't trust and feel into their own belief. And that, I think, is really one of the biggest issues with this, right? People cannot get out of their heads. People cannot get out of their heads when you talk about faith, right? And the people that can, I think, tend to be more of this agnostic, right? There isn't just this black and white intellectual understanding of God, but He's also within us, right? And there's a lot to tap into there. And I think marrying the two is really, really what it comes down to, because listen, there's some great people out there that can, meditate their hearts out, and maybe maybe it's Buddhism, right? And maybe that's the religion you believe in. And I think they've found pieces of God, right, that are of a deeper level than we found, right? But then there's also the Catholics that, really believe in this story, right? And implement it in Jesus Christ and Him as God, right? And I believe in that, but I also think there's a deeper feeling, and people that are really diving into that feeling and meditation and work like that too, is like they're finding God too. And my belief is it's all the same God, right? We're just, again, it's different languages, different definitions, and we've got to have something to fight over.
I think what we need to acknowledge is there's an inherent danger to saying, hey, Jesus is not the only way. He's not the only way. And like the verse, and I almost called my Bible study, this is 14:6, right? 14:6 is the only verse in the Bible, John 14:6, that says, I'm the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. So they would use that to say that we're not, like, we are, why, I'm going to steel man us. So I'm like, why aren't you listening to the text? Why don't you interpret the text? Why are you interpreting the text for yourself? And there's a danger. Why are you trying to bring people away from Jesus? How would you answer that?
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I love that line. I think what it's saying is, and I think to some extent, yeah, probably what I haven't clarified in all my mumbo jumbo is, and I think this relates back to like heaven on earth, my heaven on earth piece that I was talking about earlier. But yeah, the only way to heaven on earth and heaven in the afterlife is through God and Jesus Christ, right? Like, you can't be out there, some rich, person buying your cars, trying to buy your love, having a plane and all of this stuff. Like, that's not what's going to bring you happiness, right? And, maybe your family and having kids will bring you love and happiness, but ultimately life can get pretty dark. And if you don't believe in God, what do you have, right? And I forget what I saw a quote the other day. I don't even know. Jesus, to one of his disciples, he had wished them faith, right? He didn't wish them a good life, riches, lots of kids, a beautiful wife. He didn't wish any of that on them, but he wished faith, right? And I think ultimately it all comes back to your faith in God, right? And that is how we get through, right? That very, very small passage from this life to the next. But and I think that's what that is saying there, right? God, who is Jesus Christ, is saying the only way to heaven is through me, right? And you can live with almost nothing on this earth, like you're going to live with nothing in heaven, and you're going to have everything at the same time, right? It's that all-encompassing, you're feeling God's eternal love for you and unconditional love for you when you get to heaven, right? And the more that you can feel that on earth, the more that you can understand that, I think the closer you're going to get to heaven on earth, right? And heaven on earth might not be perfect, but it's a lot better than living in hell on earth, I guess.
So yeah, it's so funny.
I don't know if I arrived, but
you arrived. Well, no, it's just the interesting piece is like how little discipling of you I've done and how similar I think you and I talked about this twice, and it was just like, boom, same page. What's interesting for you and I to study, what's interesting is what enables like I've got like 7 other people that are hugely imaginative, way expansive, super curious. And like we talk and it's like, dude, that's awesome. That's like, I want to explore that. And then I have this other camp that's like, what do you mean? What do you mean Jesus? And like, what do you mean that Jesus didn't die and rise? Like, it's like dangerous. And I don't understand what enables, your mind and my mind to go to like, well, what about the deeper meaning? What maybe that's what it is, like, I don't know. The ability to be curious is interesting. But what I want to focus on is just because you did something there very quickly, which I also do. So I am the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. I think the obvious thing that we're not going to say is that heaven is exclusively somewhere we die when we stop respirating and our soul goes to once our body. Like you and I just don't see that in the text. I got news for any Christian. It's not in the text. It doesn't say that. And please come on my show and teach me if I'm wrong. I'm totally down to find me the place where it says heaven is where you go when your physical body stops respirating. Let's go. But what you also did is you're like, I think what you're doing, and I want to hear like, I'm the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me, which would conventionally sound something like believe in what it doesn't say. I think you and I also do is it does not say believe that I died and rose again on the cross, because that day is the most important. And if you have faith in that day, then when you die, then you're going to have we're very easily like, there's just none of that in there. That's way more interpretation than either Jack or Kevin is doing. But I think what you're doing that's like subtle but profound is God is Jesus. And the only way, right, is that because you kind of skipped over the
man.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, and honestly, like I think it's great to clarify this, because like even that, what I touched on earlier is like, even if Jesus was proven to not be real, right? Like I would still have my faith. Right. And so like a lot of people are going to be like, oh, so you don't believe in Jesus. Right. And it's like, no, I do. I'm just saying it's so much. My point is that it's so much more than that. Right. And so it's this belief that's better than anything else in your life. And I think this is the other thing that like they should teach us as Catholics, right? They teach us like, oh, giving up these sins is going to be hard, right? You're going to be made fun of. You're going to be
great.
You're going to suffer. You're going to, all this stuff. And it's like, man, yeah, when that's what you teach, of course, I'm not going to want to give up all these vices that I have. And it's like, it's so the opposite, right? The closer that you live your life to Christ, right? The closer you're going to be to heaven on earth, right? And it's like, if only they taught me that at a younger age, like literally like giving these things up has only brought me closer to my family, right? Closer to Christ. And my life has improved with my faith, right? And I think, sure, there's times that you have to suffer. There's times that you have to sacrifice for the good Lord. But I think overwhelmingly, we're talking about material things versus heavenly things too, right? So it's like, okay, you have to suffer for Christ, right? So you have good faith, right? Your life will most likely get better, in my opinion. But also maybe you all of a sudden like lose your spouse. Okay, that sucks. You have deeper faith than ever before, and now your spouse dies, right? It's like, it's almost like people think about it and they say, well, man, if I believe in God, my life's going to get worse. Like, no, it's going to get better. Unfortunate things, right, might happen. But then how do you deal with those situations if you have no faith, right? And so I think there's just this huge gap between the value that we put on like the material world and all of everything that we're focused on as humans. This is like, I'm trying to explain this. It's like, it's not.
No, you're doing great. No, you're doing great.
And then you have like the eternal world, right? And what matters eternally. And I think we have a hard time like leaving the material world and getting into the faithful world and realizing how fruitful that can be. Like when we die, none of this stuff matters, right? And as much as you love your family and stuff like that, like death is not something to be sad about, right? And I think the deeper faith, what's really interesting on that note, it's like the deeper I've fallen into my faith, the less I fear death, right? Because it's that opportunity to go be one with Christ, right? And I needed to improve my faith to get there, right? And so of course you don't want to live without your spouse or your kids or things like that. But I think, I don't know. Hopefully there was something in there. That's a whole nother conversation I think we could get into, and I don't even know like how to explain it in an abbreviated version.
You did great. You did great. I think that you did great. I mean, there's no doing good or bad here. We're just having a conversation. I think what's really rich for me is it's so life-giving to talk to you, and it's so deflating for me. Like when I go to and I'm going to have to like wrap up some of those Bible studies because they're just not where I am anymore. But it's so deflating to be on this journey of like this enlightened self and this like, like it's so hard it's like I want to bring people on and I can't bring them on. So I want to make it, what I'm trying to do with you today is build a bridge. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page on this, like Jesus is God, God is Jesus, and I think God is heaven and heaven is within, right? Like there's this whole, like God is love, God is like, and so I don't know if you align with that, but like, so for us, it's easy to read that in an expansive lens, right? I'm going to keep going to this because 14:6, they get me, and we can read John 1, 1 John 4 also, they stick me with that. And there's just a more expansive view to the text, but I am the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. You and I read that and we're like, oh, like live as Jesus lived and we will find some version of heaven, right? Is that fair to say? That's how you take that? And so I think if I may, I want to try this out for you on size, but it's like, I don't understand why they're ignoring the fact that Jesus was man and Jesus was God, because I think the next thing you can say is like, if God is inside of us and we are man, like we are, I'm not saying this, but this is why I think anybody that thinks outside of the tribe gets kicked out. Like I can already see myself like getting labeled a wild like, don't listen to that false prophet, but it's like, God is inside of us. Are we not God? Are we not as Jesus? If Jesus were just a man and we were just a man as Jesus, like, and I don't know, like that's crazy. And I don't want to even put it out there, but like, I guess, how is it so easy for you to not, like you and I, the text doesn't say believe in the text. Jesus doesn't say believe in the text. So it doesn't, if the text was totally a story, it's fine. But like, why is it, explain why you don't think that's a bad thing for us to be like, and so the other thing, and I'll just say this, the other common thing would be, you're speaking of agnosticism, which is one for one denying Jesus's impact to a lot of people. Right. And so that's where, you had said you're just asking questions. I haven't told them anything. I've only asked them questions, but the question, like, is it really that important if Jesus died and rose again on the cross? Is it that important if Jesus is true? Is it important? Like, those things that upsets everybody's entire way of living if they've come to know. So I don't know what you have for that.
Yeah. And like, and that's where like, I almost didn't bring that up because like, I don't want it to be misinterpreted in that way. Like, I think the question that question, like it, like I do believe in Jesus. So I just want to clear the air there. Like I do want to believe in Jesus. I do believe in Jesus and the scripture. I want to make that very clear. I think just asking that question, I think it's just like, you have to realize that like, if that went away, right? Like you don't have nothing like, and so I guess, I don't know, that's a hard nut to crack, I think. But before we touch on that, I think there's two things that came up when you were saying that. One, the miracle piece, which we touched on in the last Bible study. I think that we should go there. But the other thing that this whole time I haven't said, and I should, because a mentor of both of ours, Kevin, this changed my life when he came to me and he told me this, and so I have to mention this along my faith journey, because this really is foundational, not just on my faith journey, but this is foundational for my life and the way that I live my life. And really was in a conversation with our mentor, and he said, what if you had a Christ-like presence? What if you walked in the room and you had a presence that healed? And man, I was like, whoa, the power of that, right? And and in my little world, right, that was not very expansive, right? I'm thinking about becoming the CEO of a business, right? Becoming a millionaire, selling a bunch of product, changing the world, right? And like all of these really lofty goals of mine. And all of a sudden I realized one, that, since I was a little kid, I've had this innate ability to be that for other people, right? And two, how amazing would it be if I woke up every morning and I prayed to be a Christ-like presence for other people that day, right? Like, how would that change my day and my success as a human being, and the impact that I leave on other people, and just how much deeper can I find when I'm intentional about it? And so that was one of those things, right? I'm trying to achieve a lot, and I'm trying to learn a lot as a young man who hasn't yet, I think, proved himself. And that's stressful, like day in, day out. Like, I go to bed thinking about why did you put me here, God? Right? Like, what is my life mission, right? What am I here to do? And what am I going to do? And it keeps me up at night, and one of the things that's really given me some peace, and that, I will say, is like a mental hell, right? When you're constantly stressing about the future, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? Am I doing enough? Blah, blah, blah. That was a mental prison that I put myself in, a hell, and finding the value in being a Christ-like presence every single day, and that being at my utmost priority, that really changed my life, and it gave me a lot of peace, right? And that gave me deeper faith as well. And that deeper faith really improved my life, lowered my stress levels, helped me go to sleep, right? And all of these things. And then, to see that in practice and throughout the day, instead of saying, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said that when I met with a customer, oh, I should have said, oh, I should have made this decision instead of that decision at work, right? I should have brought this up in that meeting. Oh, well, what about that beautiful interaction I had with the homeless man on the street, right? Like, what about that, right? And how did I make those people feel when I got in the meeting with them, right? Like, was I a Christ-like presence or not? And I think there's probably a lot of things around leadership, right, that are benefited when you have that kind of a presence. But if you can be, and I've seen it, going and visiting customers of ours, like, man, if I can just be a Christ-like presence that walks, that makes a big difference there, and makes me feel better, because that's who I want to be deep down, right? That is, and so don't get wrapped up in the material, but be a Christ-like presence for others, man. Like, I don't know if that hits as hard for everybody else, but that hits hard for me, and I think that's really what it's all about. Now, the second piece of that is the miracle piece. And we talked about this, and I think there's some mixed feelings about it on last Bible study. Jesus came down, like, yes, he was God, but yes, he was a person at the same time. And so my interpretation of that is he showed us what was possible, right? And there was other prophets and there were other disciples, right, that worked miracles too. This isn't just godly, right? God gives us this ability, and God is within us. The power of God is within us. And we are just so convinced that we do not have this power, and that we cannot heal people like our ancestors and Jesus's disciples and Jesus himself. But he came down to prove that. He came down to prove that. And when I read the scripture, I think he's giving us an example of how to live, right? And when you have faith as strong as me, you can too move mountains, right? And that to me means that, Kevin, you and I could do that, right? Anyone on earth right now that finds this level of faith can go and heal people. And what does that look like? I think that might look a lot of different ways, but I think we constantly are cutting ourselves short. And listen, I'm not there yet, but I think I can get there. And I think everybody has to have that idea and that mindset that they can get there too. And I don't know, maybe I can't get there. Maybe I'll never, work a miracle in my life, but I've seen some miracles, right? And so, I think too often we just don't believe in ourselves enough.
Well, I think you're speaking about miraculous stuff. Like, that's the other thing is, like, dude, and there's a good podcast on Diaries of CEO, but with this FBI guy talking about body language, like, dude, you can heal somebody with, like, at a funeral, he was talking about how language isn't that important, right? You just go put your arm around somebody, you see them hurting, and like, you make them feel better. Like, that's miraculous. Like, that's miraculous. All you have to do is put your arm around them at the right time, and like, you could comfort somebody. And that's where it's like, we get so caught up. And I understand you're talking about like unfathomable miracles. I've seen them. I've experienced them. I know plenty of people that have. I fully believe that we can influence miracles, and that, it's really funny because like back when I was like, I'm going to call it like preliminarily curious. I used to always think like, Jesus has got mad at the disciples because they couldn't do any miracles, right? It's like, you guys, you idiots, like you don't have the faith. Yeah, you don't have the faith. And I asked the Bible study, I remember this. I was like, so if they were just people and they could do things, like what are we different? And there was like this like, and I think in the small C church, which I think you kind of are after the Catholics because it's where you came from. I'm after the Protestants because it's where I came from. And I think the deficiencies are like one for one. It's the same thing. We're not doing our job, which is to love God and love people, mother effers, not make sure that people believe what we believe. Like, God dang it. They're not the same.
It's so simple.
It's so simple. And that's what he teaches us is like, less is more, do less. And that's what you were, I want to get in there. Oh shoot. Now I lost it. Doesn't matter. There's miracles. And I think the other thing is miracles are all around, like the simplicity of the miracles. Oh, we're just people. Just like the disciples were just people. We're just people. Jesus was man. We're man. God, heaven, love. It's all God, heaven, love. There's this unity, like remain on the vine, right? All that is super interesting. But, what did you said something I wanted? Oh, so the miracles are possible if and only if we can believe. And what's interesting though, is it requires faith, right? The requirement is faith, which by definition is belief in something that can't be certain, right? Something along those lines. Does that jive? Like something that you can't know. And then we deny anything that can't be proven is true, right? That's where a lot of the triple R's in my life are like, well, there has to be one truth. And I'm like, says who? Says who? Because your truth isn't my truth, my wife's truth. Like me and my wife can exist in the same fucking conversation. We exist in two different truths, like all the time. And like, but it's this like undeniable sought after truth. In doing that, aren't you denying faith? Like you can't, if it's true, it requires no faith. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems weird to me. And I would encourage you to read this book. It's been super good. The Short Story of Myth and Joseph Campbell. We evolved out of a mythological, like everything we did was myth. We didn't know when it would rain. We prayed to the gods so it would rain. Like we used to believe in creatures and gods and all of the god of lightning and all, like we used to believe in myth. And now we believe in logos, like it's all logical. If it can't be proven as true, it must be false, which is so limiting for mankind. I'm just wondering, like, I don't know if that drives for you, but I guess it's interesting to me that the Christians are encouraging people to pursue faith, but that faith is meaningless if it could be denied as true. It's like that like one for one is part of the hypocrisy, no? Or am I crazy? Tell me I'm crazy.
So I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but we haven't gone here yet, and I think it relates to this topic. So, I've started to study more of the quantum physics, right? The biology of belief, right? And all the power, like Bruce, you should read Bruce Lipton, the biology of belief, right? And so like as it relates to a miracle, I might have given you that one before too, but as it relates to miracles, right? And so I'm in this health and wellness space. So I, get to interact with, I have the absolute pleasure of interacting with a lot of healers, right? Throughout our profession. And they tend to align with our value of providing natural supplements that, as nature and as God intended, right? God made the vitamin complex. And I'm not going to get into that. We can get into that on another episode, but God made a complex vitamin, right? With a ton of different chemical compounds that only can be found in nature, right? Our founder said vitamin complexes are so biochemically complicated that only living cells can create them. Yet us humans think we're so smart, and we're out there in a lab trying to isolate these things, and they're probably doing more harm than good, right? And so if you follow this belief, like it's so expansive, right? And you say, oh, we don't have the power to heal ourselves. We don't have the power to heal other people. There's a lot of stories out there, and there's a lot of studies around like how you can heal yourself, right? Through your own beliefs, right? And a lot of times, cancer and different various diseases are coming after you because of a lot of the beliefs that you have and some emotional issues that you have as well. And now I'm getting really, really like to your lay person, like this is some woo-woo stuff, right? But, again, another mentor of mine had told me, when you start taking it seriously, it starts to take you seriously, right? And the more that you learn, the more that you understand. So if you can, if you can find somebody with cancer, right, off the side of the street, and they don't believe in God, right? Maybe it's a homeless person, right? He's developed cancer. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't have any connections. Probably nobody's told him that they love him in over 10 years, right? And he has no purpose in his life. Every day he gets up and he begs for money so he can buy food, right? You have somebody like that and with no purpose in their life. And people, I'm of this belief, right, that your spirituality and the belief that you are here for a purpose, right? People with purpose don't get sick, right? And there's that belief kind of in alternative medicine, right? And so if you give this homeless man, right, belief in God, right, a little bit of purpose in his life, like he might cure himself, right? And that's an out there belief, right? But I truly believe that we, especially with modern medicine, like we are only scratching the surface of health, right? Like this is far more expansive than we even believe is possible, right? And so we have to look, and this is what I really appreciate about the business that I'm in, we're providing whole food nutrition, right? That's just one aspect of health, man. Like if you've grown up being abused, right, and you've never healed from your emotional trauma, you're never going to get well taking our supplements, right? And that's why we sell through healthcare practitioners, because they're looking at the physical, they're looking at the chemical, they're looking at the emotional, and they're looking at the spiritual. That to me is holistic healthcare. And if you're not a doctor that looks at all of those things, right, you're going to be missing. You're going to be missing the mark. You're going to be missing things. And it's just not all chemical, right? And so, that is what I think, to sum it up, like that explains a lot of the complexity of what's in the Bible as well, is getting back to some of the natural ways that God intended. And listen, they had a whole different healthcare system back then. Some of it was worse, some of it was better, right? But there's a lot of power in our belief. There's a lot of power in purpose. And I know I got kind of woo-woo there. So, there's going to be people that absolutely don't relate to that. But listen, the more you learn, the more I learn, the more I believe in that kind of healing, right? And a lot of it is around energetics too. So I don't know, man. That's like as quick as I could sum that up. And it's probably not good to just touch on such a woo-woo topic that quickly, but that could be a whole nother episode as well.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's great because it's on your mind and you said it. I think it's great. But so are you positing that, so take a homeless man, no purpose, no faith, and was there a third condition that he was missing? There's three things that we were going to
Yeah, I mean, like no love too, right? Like he probably doesn't love or value himself because nobody else has showed that to him, his current state in life. It's
your belief that if you were to love him, provide him with purpose and meaning in life, and introduce him to God or, a different version of himself that has been masked by whatever insecurities he's like, that he may be able to heal himself from cancer. You're saying that might be, And I think what's interesting is it would be very easy for somebody to be like, dude, that dude's a heretic. He's talking about some false shit. And then I'm like, read the Bible. That's what he did. This is what he did. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, that is it. And I believe it too. I think we should go out and, you know what? I think we should try 1,000 times. And if it works one time, I don't know that we can say that it was us or coincidence. But man, I bet you, if we did it, anyway, I'm with you. Before you go, I want to try one thing on for size, and then I want to make sure, because you kind of talked about, you had talked about sex culture, and you talk about what I'm going to call sin or demons. Interesting. I think they're the same: separation from God, separation from your true self. Like you went into that, but I think what was mentioned subtly is like we're not just talking about like porn, cussing, thievery, and these evil, like the obvious ones. You're talking about. I remember this. Because we're talking about our passions, right? Like when snowmobiling becomes such an opportunity, like snowmobiling or jet skiing, all that. And I remember like 2 years ago when I had kind of been really culminating on this, like what's important journey. And I landed in a place of like, I was super gung-ho. Like, it's all about how many days are we going to get on the snow. Like, you and I both have rearranged our entire lives to make sure that we can be in the backcountry snowmobiling as many days as possible. And I called you on like the second, it's probably the second season after we had bought the house. We bought a house so that we could rearrange our lives to live there, because snowmobiling is so important. And it's funny we can talk about it now because it's like, what a bunch of goons. But like, to most people, like, that's awesome. We have a passion, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, man, like, I'm just in this season of life where I'm going to take it as it comes. Like, I'm going to ride as many days as I can come. I ride as many days as I can. I'm not going to fight with my wife about it. Like, we'll just take it there. And I remember your words precisely. We're like, you feeling all right? Do we need to talk about this? And like, I'm 33, 34 at the time. You're 22. It's like, can't fathom it. And then at 23 this season, like, you're kind of just like, hey, take it or leave it. Like, snowmobiling, like, you're back. Last year, you're gung-ho, getting all your days in. You're running a backflip. Arguably, you're a professional back there. And this year, even with the jet skiing, you're semi-professional jet skier. Is just kind of like, meh, it is what it is. Speak to that, because I think it's a very healthy place and it's counter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be a whole episode too. But yeah, I mean, as a young man, and I think for me, a lot of that was some of the spiritual, emotional work that I did on my own, right, and through coaching and stuff like that, and through some mentors is really that challenged me. Like, why are you snowmobiling like this, right? Like, dig down deeper, and I'm like, I just love it. It's something I did with my dad since I was a little kid, and blah blah blah. And well, it was a way. We talked about the silver spoon, right? And growing up with that silver spoon, like getting into the business and excelling in the business, I was always going to be that silver spoon. And then I so wanted to be a self-made man, right? And, there's some people in my life too that I think, kind of shamed me for being the silver spoon and stuff like that. And I lived with a lot of guilt around that. I hated who I was, right? And I always hated saying like, oh, I'm, the owner's son. Like, I still, to this day, man, I hate saying that. I really do. And so, I found an outlet, which was snowmobiling, in which I could go and prove myself, and everything would be self-made in that arena. And so, I was a little off the wall, crazy, trying to backflip, stuff like that. But that was my outlet to say, I earned it. Right? Like, I earned this, right? And I can push myself farther than anybody else, right? And, did I have any, listen, I haven't been snowmobiling in the backcountry that long, and I don't have that many days on a sled. And there's just, I should not have been trying to throw a backflip last year, right? And so I really dug into that and realized, like, what do I value, right? Like, man, I really want to have kids, right? I really want to make a positive impact on the world. And I really lost my spark this year with snowmobiling, but I think it was an idol for me. It was also a way that I found love for myself, because, I wanted to prove, and it was more to prove myself to me than it was to anybody else, because everyone else is still going to call me a silver spoon, and that's fine. Like, I don't care, but am I, right? Like, am I worthy? Like, am I capable of going and being a pro sledder? Am I capable of going and doing these things that I didn't grow up doing? And so for me, like, pushing myself as a snowmobiler, I became obsessed with it, and it certainly became an idol because it was me trying to prove me to myself. Right. And in a way, I don't regret any of that, because in a way it did do that in little Jack. Right. And then my mind expanded and realized, man, there's a lot more amazing things to go learn and study and be a part of out here outside of snowmobiling. So in a nutshell, because we're wrapping up on time, I think in a nutshell, that's my story. And when you started, I think, getting into that space more and more, realizing it's not about how many days you get on the snow. And me, I'm not missing a day. I'm like, cutting some of my responsibilities off to get out on a ride and stuff like that. And now I'm like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Right. And, I ended up not really even riding that much last year, living out west, but just getting busy with work and wanting to learn and reading and stuff like that. And that became a bigger piece of my life. But there's a lot more to that story for me. probably a lot that I don't even maybe want to say on a podcast, but in a nutshell, that's my story.
That's rad, dude. Thanks for sharing. Did you happen to listen to that audio that I sent you? I sent you and Matt. So no, you don't have to check it out, but I'm going to leave you with this because I think it's really interesting. The art of reduction and more is less. Like, so somebody said this to me and I never really thought about it. Like we've been eroding, not progressing. We've been pushing for progress. So like if you, and like, I don't know that we've actually, like anything we've done has actually moved backwards. So I'm going to use two examples, right? LOL. Like LOL was a great fast way to say laughed out loud. Now it's a great lie. Every time I text it and I'm really laughing, I have to say like actually laughing out loud, right? Like you have to do it longer. So what we should say is DLOL. Like that was enough to make me smile. Like we should say he. And like I use that as a small example of like what, like when man invents something, it actually is like, we probably should just stop, right? And you're kind of talking about like the health stuff is like all organic is good. Like I have a feeling most of their medicine was better way back in the day. And like my question to you would be, show me something that we've done that's forward, where it wouldn't have been better for us to just be tribal, like native, you know what I mean? And like, I think that the easiest answer is healthcare. Like healthcare, we're living longer. Well, if we believe that the best thing for us to do is die and go to perfect heaven, why do we want to live long? Like, doesn't even make sense. So I don't know. My question is like, what have we actually moved forward? And like, I think we're moving backwards. I think we're perpetually like propelling ourselves in a decline, not in a progression, in an attempt to progress ourselves. Like, I don't know. Super interesting. But I guess if people didn't denounce me as a heretic before and a false prophet, there you have it. And we'll leave them.
One more thing before we go.
Hit it.
That's one of the things where I think we really have to, because there's a lot of great things about new modern medicine, right? Like, there's probably going to be a time in my life where I hurt myself and I need to go to the hospital, right? But I think looking at that as the only form of healthcare, right? That's saying that like all of the thousands of years of using herbs and different medicine is like, we need to value that as well. And we need to have a modern healthcare system that does all of these things. But I think like pharmaceuticals are not the answer in most cases, in my opinion, right? There's natural ways of doing, of healing the body. And I think, this is kind of what came up for me when you mentioned that is like, it's similar to your belief in God, right? People are looking externally for this intellectual understanding of God and instead of asking themselves inside, right? They're also doing that with their healthcare, right? Is this doctor going to tell me that I'll get well if I take this medication? How does it make you feel, right? Or, now you can't sleep. Oh, now your anxiety is even worse. Oh, now your depression's even worse. How is it making you feel? Like ask your body, listen to your body. And most people aren't even doing that. They're going and looking for somebody else to tell them that this is going to improve their health. It's like, is it improving your health? Like it's that simple. People aren't, is your faith growing? Have you found a deeper faith? And that's like, for me, is when I dive into some of these like borderline heretic and like anti-religion beliefs. It's like, well, but I'm bringing myself closer to Christ. I'm a better man. I've given up a lot of the sins that I was ashamed and guilty of the past. My relationship with my soon-to-be wife is better than ever. I'm more able to love other people, right? I'm showing up as a Christ-like presence to other people in my life. And I'm overwhelmingly a better man than I was a year ago, going in the faith direction that I'm going in, right? Which is kind of away from the Catholic Church. Now, can I marry the two, right? I don't know. That's what my 24-year-old brain is trying to figure out. But I think it's a matter of just saying like, hey, is your faith getting better? Hey, is your health getting better? It's that simple. And people are just not asking that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Buy your fruit. Whatever that saying is, like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. You're bearing good fruit. I would say you're on the right path, but well, that's super awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. I don't think he disappointed. I would encourage everybody to ask better questions. I would get super curious. If you didn't like it, particularly if you're like somebody of traditional faith, like if you are willing to have a conversation, I want to have a conversation and explore this with you, because I like cherish what you believe in. I'm not trying to denounce it. I think there's just a more expansive version. I think like the hypocritical sentiment in the church is something that we can deal with together. So If you didn't like it, I'm sorry, but I'd love to have you on and we can talk about it. I think dissenting and differing opinions is what this is really designed to do. This is why we do the podcast. So for those of you that appreciated it, we're figuring it out. I don't know where you're going to call a spiritual home, but just know that you're not alone, and it's okay to ask questions. Jack DuBois, hope you enjoyed. Stay curious.